Welcome back, friendly ghosts, and how's everybody doing? We're back into some RPG Maker 3. I've been working on a project for RPG Maker. I deleted some of my old games that I made on it, and I'm attempting to make a survival horror-esque style video game. I made the first video about this, or not the first, but the last video I made about this was about 6 months ago. And so this is 6-month-old footage that was all supposed to be released at that same time, but I held on to it. So I've gotten a lot of work done since then, but I still got a ways to go. So here, what I'm doing today is we're doing storytelling editor. See, with RPG Maker 3, you can't really control character interactions or put too many characters on one map or stimulate something that feels lively. Everything on the standard maps of RPG Maker 3 feel like a ghost town. Like even if you put characters on the map, it doesn't feel like it comes to life all the way. So that's where Storyteller comes into play for me, is that it allows you to stimulate some bit of life into your game. You can add multiple characters, as many characters as you want into your Storyteller, because you use character pictures that you attach to your models, or just whatever character picture that you want. You don't even have to put NPCs in your game. You can just come up with random pictures and put them all in Storyteller and let that bring your game to life if you want to approach it that way. So this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to use Storyteller a lot more to also save on CPU usage, so I can stuff a lot of NPC-like world building avenues into my Storyteller without having to create multiple character models. It helps save, and it also does a much better job of accomplishing the goal. Also, it feels a bit more important when you put something into Storyteller, because it makes it feel more rewarding to actually have to read it. So a lot of times you just write a little message in the regular field map, and it just feels like a mundane, doesn't feel like it's screaming for your attention, but it feels a bit more rewarding to have something kind of like a cutscene, even though it's 2D images. It just feels a bit more rewarding and enjoyable than having your regular conversation play out. And also it saves usages, so I don't have any real strats or secrets to tell you about doing Storyteller. There's no secrets that I'm aware of. The only thing that I can tell you is that the individual slots going vertically down the 30, you see all the numbers, I believe it's like some tenths of a second, some fractions of a second that each slot down vertically. So just timing it and playing around with it until you get something just right, especially with your sound effects. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just gotta mess around with it until you get a bit of understanding towards it. There's no secrets that I'm aware of, just again learning what you have to work with, and it is more or less explains itself. Okay, so here you have me messing around with values again. I mentioned values in my first video. Using values, it helps you again save on CPU usages. And so what I'm doing here is I'm trying to create a banking system. A banking system that keeps track and allows you to transfer over your currency. So values is not that complicated. You just gotta remember that it's an invisible event. You have no way to see the event. You have shared values, you have eternal values. They're all the same thing. They're just different storage areas that you just have to keep in mind and remember what's what. So you're gonna have to write it down. Make sure you don't forget what is where, because you will not be told what your values are. You just have to be aware of that. So make sure that you write your values down. For me, my values, I have shared values 3, 4, and 5 being money currency. And so I'm using that with my banking system. I want my game to be able to transfer currency from like a lower value of currency to a higher value of currency. And it's going to be an ongoing thing in my game where you have to manage your money. What my intentions for my game to be is it's going to be a bit of a traveling type of game, but it's going to be traveling mixed with a large scale, well, hopefully a mansion type of vibe. I haven't gotten to that part just yet, but I have mapped it out, and I'll show you guys my map later on in this video. The whole map is going to be one exploration zone, and you're going to have currency to buy specific tools that you're going to need to travel in specific places to help you travel, or to do this or do that. And so you're going to have to manage your currency and choose whether you want to transfer your currency to a specific other currency, and that's just the short of what I'm trying to do. And so I'm using a banking system that try to tell the player how much the player has, but I'm also having it on the side being able to transfer your currency to a higher value. I originally had this being like the old-fashioned way, where I didn't have values in place. So instead of that one event mode that you see, that one event mode was 14 different event modes that I had in place. So that means I had one event, and then I copied and pasted that to event mode number 2. Events that I had in the first mode is going to the second mode, but I'm going to change the numbers, and then so on for mode 3, mode 4, mode 5. So I end up with 13 different event modes. That's going to clog up a lot of space. And so what the values allow me to do is cut all of that down and put it all into one event mode. Save on a tremendous amount of space, so I could do a lot more. And it also makes it a lot easier to keep track of. Another example for how valuable variables are. When I'm saying values, they're variables. They're variables, and their variables have different values. Okay, so now here we are. We're moving on to map making. Probably the most troublesome area with RPG Maker 3 is trying to make a decent map. I'm not good at it myself, but one thing that I did is I sketched my map out on MS Paint beforehand, create a clear vision for what I wanted. Just plan ahead a little bit. What's my map going to be used for? And so I planned that out beforehand, and I have a decent idea. And so I drew it on MS Paint, and then I tried to draw it again on RPG Maker 3. So that's where the problem comes in, because drawing it in RPG Maker 3 is a huge hassle. You don't have the tools necessary to make things exactly the way you want to. The biggest problem is that you don't have small enough tools. So there's so much room for error with that. You don't get to pencil in and thread the needle with everything you're doing. So you have to plan ahead. Otherwise, you're going to be smearing and smudging your work that you don't want to be touched. So that's where the big problem comes in for making your field maps. So again, you got to plan ahead. And one thing that I do to plan ahead, first thing first, I want to make sure that my map comes out exactly the way that I want it to come out, or at least get it somewhat similar to what I envisioned for it to be. So the only way that I am aware of to do that is you're going to have to create shortcuts. So one way to do about this is using the water field terrain. And why you use the water field terrain is because whenever you use the water field terrain, you're allowed to use the 1 pixel with the first field editor mode. The second use of that is when you use the water terrain, it automatically lowers a 0 altitude. So that allows you to make an account for what parts of the map you want to be elevated, which parts of the map you don't want to be elevated. So what I do is I go through the map. First, I draw it out with a variety of different terrains with different colors, just so I could separate them. And then I make sure that I separate the terrains that I want to be higher elevated from the ones that I want to be lower elevated. And the ones I want to be lower, I draw in a water terrain. And after that, in V mode, I go in and I raise the elevation, the terrains that I want to be higher. So while I'm doing this, the water terrain cannot be elevated along with the other terrains. Before you even go into editing, you have a choice for your map for whether you want your water level to be. And you have the choice for having no water. You have the option of being low water. This is what I like to use. It puts water at the lowest possible area of the map. And what that means is it allows for you to have cliffs and mountain regions looking like skyliners in your map. Then you have medium, then you have high. And when you go to high, that means basically nothing on your map is going to be mountain height. It's going to be just kind of short because there's a limit to the game. With your water region at a low altitude, the lowest that you're allowed to keep and maintain a land region is around 50. So when you get that low or that close, I believe the cutoff is like 48. So what I did here is I used the water trick. I lowered everything on the map down to a water region of 0. And then I made sure I map it out and I separated everything that I wanted to be separated. But also what I did is while I was doing that, I used my time to raise specific mountain regions that I wanted to be raised separately. And that's why you see some areas on the map look brighter than the others, because that's higher elevation. So I made sure that I raised those areas first, got my highest areas raised first. And then after I did that, I turned my regions back to landform regions, and I went in and I made the reticle as large as it can possibly be. And the trick with this is, as long as you don't directly target your highest level elevation and you target a low elevation level, then everything that is at the lowest level will raise without raising the higher elevations. So that's the trick that I used for making my map. Again, my highest landforms first, get my mountain regions, and then after I made sure I established those, I went in and I turned other regions that were once water regions to prevent them from getting higher. I go in and I turn them back into landforms so that they can actually raise when I use the raising tool. And just for the record, I don't use the mound or whatever that first option is on the V editor, V mode. I don't use the first option. I use the second option because the second option raises your landforms. It raises them to be flat, and they come down at like a Pizza Hut angle, you know. So I like my landforms to be flat. I don't want them to be curving and round. I want them to have stability for your characters, because that way the game doesn't glitch out. There are some instances where I will use the mound, but those are very few and far between, because I feel like you can accomplish just about everything that you want by using the other option. So I use that and I increase my reticle, and I go about raising all of my lowest land areas. Now, if I were to target my highest land areas, if I were to increase my reticle while pointing at my highest landform, what would happen normally is that it would turn everything within the reticle to the exact height of what my reticle is pointed at, directly at, what it's centered at. So everything inside of the circle would automatically transfer into the height of what I'm pointing at. And that's what I wanted to avoid. So that's why we're using the water trick, by raising the highest landforms first, and then we go around and we target the lowest landforms possible, and we just start raising them until we get the desired level, and that doesn't affect the highest landform. Contrastly, if I'm trying to decrease a landform, then the same rule applies. So if I have a high platform, let's say that I have it at like 255, and I have one landform that is at like 60, and I'm trying to decrease, but I have this reticle that it's not small enough, so it's going to target the smaller region at the same time. This won't affect the smaller region. It will only affect the tall regions. But if I target the smallest region and some of that reticle gets into the highest region while I'm trying to decrease it, then the highest region will automatically turn into the lowest region that I'm aiming at. That might sound confusing. I'm trying to think of a better way that I could put it. So if my 70 platform and I have my 255 platform, which is the highest mountain region, the highest elevation that you can get in the game, I'm trying to lower the 70 platform to like lower than 70. But the reticle, it's so big and it doesn't get any smaller, so it's going to include the 255. I'm trying to lower my 70. I try to lower it. Whatever that 255 that was included is going to automatically turn down into the 70. And that's the problem that we're trying to avoid. It's the same thing when you're decreasing it, and it's the same thing when you're increasing it. You just flip it a little bit. So we're trying to avoid that and create something slightly unique looking or slightly planned by using the water strats and using the high-low elevation tricks to prevent unwanted platforms from raising and keep only the platforms that we want to be raised being affected. So you're just gonna have to mess around basically. You're just gonna mess around basically, because I'm pretty sure none of that made enough sense. It's gonna be a struggle messing around with it, because a lot of your stuff is gonna get messed up unless you plan ahead. You're gonna have a struggle getting precisely what you want. But I managed to get something somewhat identical to what I wanted. It's not exactly like it. It's slightly off because it's hard to draw using an analog stick. That's more or less what's going to be happening through all of this. Now, after I do this, you're going to see that I have some very sharp looking edges. Those are a bit unavoidable. They're going to happen no matter what you do. So you're going to have to re-go over it and pray that you don't mess anything up with the smudge tool. You're gonna have a time skip, and one thing you're gonna have to remember to save very frequently. Don't ever go too long without saving, and it will ask you to save whenever you leave. Okay, this game, it tries to set you up. If you don't save when it asks you to leave, it's gonna delete all of your progress. So just be careful. So it's going to ask you to save it once when you leave the editor, and then it's going to ask you again if you want to save it when you leave the first menu before you go into the editor. And if you click no on any one of those, it's going to delete all of your progress. So do be very, very careful, my friend. Don't just perfect that. You also want to go in and save your game from the data region, because that's the only official and real save. Just because you save it while exiting one of the sub menus doesn't mean you're saving your game until you see the actual save file doing that long ass loading screen saying, oh, we're loading your game. Until you see that, your game is not saved. So don't be fooled. When it's saying you want to save the game when exiting the sub menu, it's just saying, do you want to save your progress, or do you care if we just erase it? Because for some reason, the game will just erase it. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. I got a lot of my map done, and we're just going to showcase a lot of it off. So one thing that I didn't tell you guys is, before you even start editing, one thing you're going to want to do is when you get into editor, you're going to want to go into V mode, and then you're going to want to hit square when you're in V mode. And you want to hit square until you get that red rectangle on your map. You're going to want that rectangle to be there, because that's showing you the limitations for what's available for the player. And you don't want to be making your map outside of the playable area. You want to just do that. Do yourselves a favor. Make sure that you hit square in V mode. Get that out of bounds area to pop up so you know what you have to work with. So that should be the first thing that you do. So my map's going to consist of 13 different areas. The first town is going to be at the very beginning. That's all going to be in area number 1. And outside of that is going to be the part of the world map at the bottom left corner of the heavy green corner. The bottom left, that's where everything takes place at the very start. And you see there's going to be a lot of cutoffs and regions that's going to block the way for the player. And as the game progresses, you're going to unlock a variety of ways to travel. Outside of that, this entire map is one big mansion that you're going to be traveling from this point to that point. But there's not going to be like traveling. Everything's going to be fast travel. But you're going to be able to explore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create multiple maps. One is going to be used for fast traveling and for the main game, for all the major events to take place, and the other is going to be like a side mission where I'm going to be able to store a lot of secrets in, because you only get 20 field map events. So I'm going to use those first 20 for the main game, and then I'm going to have a copy paste map, and I'm going to have that separate map being used for a mode where you can search the entire field based on the area that you're in. And then there's going to be those 20 events are going to be used for 20 secrets. More or less all that I have to sell you guys for now. Now I have done more since this video. A lot of it's story based and a lot of it event based, and still got more to come. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video of rambling and trying to make sense. One thing, the coolest things about my map, I think, is that if you look at each and every area, you wouldn't be able to tell that it's all part of the same map. That's what I was aiming for. You wouldn't be able to tell that it's all part of the same map. And it doesn't feel too crowded. It feels massive. Like what I was aiming for is for, like, just because you're in a different area or you're aiming a different direction, one view of the same view that you might have had looks completely different from this side. I'm also proud of the idea that this whole entire map is going to aspire to be your traditional survival horror-esque style of puzzle solving. But within the map, there's going to be dungeons that are going to be the actual mansions, so to speak, or areas to unlock and stuff like that. So we'll see. I have 25% of usage on my game so far. A lot of it went to the very first town where I'm trying to teach the player how to play and make sure I have established a story and whatnot. And I'm almost completely done with the first town introductory stage. So hopefully I could keep that at around 25%. Then the rest of that can be used on a lot more gameplay oriented aspects. And if that's the case, having 75% or maybe 74% or even 70% of usage to dedicate towards gameplay, when I'm not planning on using much battle type of gameplay, because those take up the most usage. So I'm gonna have so much usage to just try to make this as rich as possible. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited to see what type of puzzles I can come up with and how well I can mesh this multi-variety map and try to make this world be what I envision it to be. And you know, it's all just a dream at this point. It's all a work in progress, but we will see. We will come back in a soon day. We will come back in a later day. It probably won't be soon. And we're going to be doing October Halloween themed games. And one thing that I'm going to be looking for while I'm playing these Halloween themed games is inspiration, more inspiration. So I'm going to be looking at what makes them work, because I'm going to try to have some sort of tension. I want tension. I don't want jump scares, because you can't really do jump scares anyways, but I hate that. I hate that. I'm trying to invoke tension. Tension is going to be the main source, and dread, because you're going to have a hard time with RPG Maker 3 trying to make something scary. You're going to have a hard time with that. So a lot of it is going to have to be sensory based. It's going to have to be setting based. It's going to have to be tension, the mood of the story, if you were even paying attention to the story. And it all stems from the way that everything looks, from the established mindset that the player is going to have established to them from the very beginning. Consistency of those establishments, and added with a bit of sensory. So this just trying to make things work with the templates that are in place. And I'll see you guys in the next video. The next video may very well be Koudelka, because we're fast approaching October. But till then, I appreciate you guys and gals for tuning in to this, what I think is very boring to watch probably. But you know, it's creative, and it's something that only I can do. You know, only I can make my game. But you guys can make your own games, and that's the beauty of this, is that this is something that you can only get from here. And I like doing things like that, because I don't like following the mode. I like doing my own thing. I like my own freedom of expression. You know, I feel like that's what makes me feel at home. So I'm glad to have you guys here, guys and gals, grandmas and grandpas, and all of your freedom of expressions. And I hope you guys are, guys, gals, I hope you people are doing lovely with your freedom of expression. And I'll see all of you soon. May peace be with. Always keep your heads up. Deuces, those both ITOwl, stay cool. And if you like this content, be sure to show some love. But always be sure to show that love to the people who matter to you. This is ITOwl bidding you farewell. Peace, much love, and stay cool. Deuces.